let's talk about photography, because photography is your avocation.
Like a lot of kids with a dream to be a race car driver, when you're a little kid, I soon realized when I started reading the magazines that were coming monthly and reading about how A.J. Foyt and Mario Andretti, those types started driving when they were 4 years old. I'm already 10, 11. I was like, well, this isn't going to happen. There was, again, an influential experience in my life was going to see the movie Grand Prix.
Oh, yeah.
In 1966, I think it was.
Yep.
In the farmlands of Ohio, my dad and his best friend and I traveled 75 miles to Toledo, Ohio to watch Grand Prix in Cinerama.
All right.
Well, Cinerama alone back then was a pretty visually impactful experience, but then to watch Grand Prix for the first time.
Right.
And I remember watching that film and thinking, if I can't drive these cars, I want to photograph. I want to be the guy photographing these cars. And well, it turns out I ended up, the still photographer for John Frankenheimer, the director of Grand Prix, was no less than Jesse Alexander, the great, legendary Formula One photographer for road and track. And I ended up becoming friends with Jesse Alexander. The last gift I ever gave my father before he passed away was the book that Jesse Alexander did called At Speed, a coffee table book published by Road and Track that just was a major influence on me photographically. And as I said, seeing that film was my inspiration for how I looked at photographing racing. Okay, and as well as cars in general, but certainly, and Saul Bass, who did all the title design for that film, and as I understand it, was responsible for the split screen introduction when they go to the carburetor linkage and it splits and splits and splits and splits again to the point where you got 64 same images all in synchronization, and that was revolutionary.
Absolutely.
No one had done that kind of thing. And it shows kind of the influence that graphic design has on filmmaking.
Definitely.
With the right person, especially when you have a director like Frankenheimer who's willing to take those kind of chances.
Well, and just the innovation in cinematography with the cameras mounted on the cars.
Oh, yeah, and the helmet cams. You think of that they did Grand Prix in Panavision.
Right.
Analog technology, and they still haven't, in my estimation, they still haven't bettered that film. You look at Ron Howard's attempt with The Rush, which was, a good movie,
right.
Depicting the rivalry between Niki Lauda and James Hunt. He had the advantage of all the digital technology of the time, going to 2017, 16, around there. And to me, the film certainly isn't any better in my mind, isn't as good as, still is, Jan Frankenheimer's Grand Prix. Cinemagraphically. So it's not always, technology is not always the savior. It's how you use the technology. And you see that a lot of filmmaking where there's so much CGI. Well, let's do this in CGI. Same thing happens with photography. People who cannot get the photograph right in camera. Well, we'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in Photoshop and all that. So,
do it right the first time.
Frankenheimer didn't have that luxury, and a good photographer doesn't have that luxury either. The more you get it right in camera, the better off you're going to be. You've got a better raw product to work with. It's his talent over technology, if you will.
What did you think of Ford v Ferrari, by the way?
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because of the, like many of us, it's difficult to go to films with car guys because you see all the things that are wrong. That's not Daytona. That's California Speedway. That's not the J car. That's they just put a black hood on a Ford GT. You see all that kind of stuff, and But from a storytelling standpoint of the relationship between Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby, I thought it was tremendous, and it shows by virtue of the box office popularity. You had a lot of people who weren't necessarily car people going to see that film because it was such an engaging story. And Carroll Shelby's one of those larger-than-life personalities anyway. A lot of people, not non-car people, probably never heard of Ken Miles, and they realized what a terrific person he was, and boy, what a great job done. Both characters were. When I heard that Matt Damon was going to be Carroll Shelby, I was like, what? Oh, God, Hollywood, you've done, you're screwing with this again, At least get Matthew McConaughey, someone who's a Texan, tall and lanky, and sounds like a Texan. But to his credit, Matt Damon, within first 5 minutes of that film,
Won you over.
he's so good. You look right past it, and you're like, yeah,
Totally agree.
yeah, absolutely.
And I love watching Christian Bale. His focus is
Christian.
it's scary how focused that guy is.
Yeah. Boy, I think his portrayal of Miles is probably one of the best I've seen, regardless of any film genre. I mean, that's just a great character portrayal.
He inhabits his characters every time.
Yeah.
Well, so we're talking a little bit about other people's photography here.
Yeah,
but
Jesse
how about
Alexander? Yeah.
How about your own photography, though, Royce? I mean, I first of all, I love your imagery.
Thank you.
I'll just tell everyone that the studio set where some episodes are shot, that's all Royce's photography. And he was kind enough to let me use it, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I was honored by your request. I mean, my
Thank
goodness. Thank you for asking. It was a great honor. I'm glad that I'm flattered you use them, and hopefully they complement the set.
They do, and they convey exactly what I wanted, which is I wanted people to get a sense of the history of the automobile, and they do just that.
Well, thank you.
So,
in fact, one of the shots, the Ford GT shot, was right here in Lion Air Museum.
That's
It was
right.
shot right over on the other side of the B25 there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the one that hangs right behind me.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's my favorite one.
Yeah,
So.
thank you. Well, good. Yeah, I mean, the Bentley shot was done down in Julian. I was on the Bentley tour a few years ago, and that was just a shot. I shot with a Sony RX-1R, which is a fantastic camera. Mm-hmm. People look at that little camera and go, $3,200. Well, yeah, it's got a Zeiss 2.0 35 millimeter lens on it. The tolerances on that camera, I was told the tolerances on that camera on the assembly are sometimes as close as 1 micron, and it shows. That camera is a jewel of a camera. I can't recommend it enough. If someone wants to buy one camera to use, buy that camera.
That's like aerospace grade.
Yeah, it's just, the battery life is crap, because
Right.
they made it so small, so they couldn't use larger battery. But the image quality is just astounding on that little jewel of a camera. It's nice to. I've actually loaned mine to use to people who go to concerts and places where they will confiscate cameras, and the security guys see that little camera and they're, oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
How serious? Not realizing you're going to get a 42 megapixel full frame image with a Zeiss 2.0 lens.
So tell me about shooting these cars. What's your approach?
It's interesting you should ask that, because I get that question a lot. I've ended up getting a lot of clients who came to me after watching me shoot. Mercedes-Benz started that. My relationship with Mercedes-Benz started that way. I was at Pebble Beach one year when they had the Silver Arrows, and I'm taking photographs, just doing what I do. And after a while, this young gentleman came up to me and says, we've had a lot of photographers in here shooting, but no one's shooting the way you are. Do you mind if I take a look at your photo? So I turned my camera out. It was a Canon 5D Mark II, I think, at the time. Turned the camera around, the LCD display, and start rotating through the image. Said, yeah. Said, by the way, we're going to have these cars down on the field later on this afternoon. Would you mind coming down and taking some shots for us? You're not going to ask me twice. What, Silver Arrows down on the grass in front of the water, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
Right.
Yeah, you try preventing me from being there. Yeah,
right.
Good luck. So I go down and take these shots, which are just once in a lifetime. You've got setting sun, you've got Silver Arrows, no crowds, none of the photo bombing, none of that. You're just down there with the cars, and took just basically exhausted the battery and the cards. I took those photos, made some prints, and as an expression of gratitude, I took them out to the Classic Center a few weeks later in a box just to thank you for allowing me to come down. And that became the start of my relationship with Mercedes-Benz. From there, they offered me, they said, we'd like for you to become a Mercedes-Benz photographer.
Very cool.
It was a lot of fun. Now, there's more to it, just not simple phone calls and all that kind of stuff, but nonetheless, that kind of, again, providential intervention in terms of opportunity. I'd been shooting for a while. Sometimes it takes somebody from the outside to make an observation that you yourself doesn't make. My background, again, being product design, industrial design, And a friend of mine once day, this is not that long ago, maybe the last 3 years, a very good close friend of mine one day was looking at my photography and says, your photographs look like an art center rendering. I go, holy crap. I said, that's why I take the angles I take.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, they do. And I'm sure that was has been an absolute influence on my approach to how I look at a car from a design standpoint, as well as the perspective. I was noted when I would hire studios to shoot, the catchphrase for me when I would direct the photographers, when I was being the art director, low and wide. I want a shot that's real low, because for toys, that makes them look very majestic.
Right.
It just makes them look heroic.
Sure.
You know,
bigger than they really are.
And if like here, we got this beautiful 962 Jägermeister 962C. You know, you could take a shot from a normal eye height and get it, and you get the background. But if I get a camera about right here and get a wide angle shot, that car is just going to fill that frame up. That orange color is just going to, you're going to be challenged not to look at that image.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
So the idea, of course, is to come up with compelling imagery, to make that kind of breakthrough image that people just look at and are captivated by. If you can do that as a photographer, you're making some achievement.
Automotive fashion photography. What is that?
Well, as I said before, earlier in the interview, we talked about a mentor of mine saying, when I was a designer, you're not in the design business, you're in the fashion business. We're in the fashion business. And if you look back at the history of automotive design, you know, from a marketing standpoint, fashion has always been an integral part, even, you know, going back to the 1910s.
Sure.
They started introducing fashion. Henry Ford, of course, is famous for any color as long as it's black. But when it came to doing their brochures, you know, especially on the higher end cars, fashion lifestyle became important. Fashion, you know, cars are a very romantic product. There's a romance with the automobile.
Well, and also the concept of moving up the ladder. I mean, for example, Willie Durant came up with the whole idea of a hierarchy of brands for General Motors.
Yeah.
That ties in.
And came up with the art and color division of General Motors.
It's okay, we're just gonna have to deal with jet noise, right?
Well, Edsel Ford was busy trying to get his dad to move forward. You know, he was stuck in the Model T design with the black.
Right.
You know, the visionaries at General Motors were doing art and color and seeing that. And you saw that also true in the independent brands in the 20s. I mean, you look at, you know, the independent coach builders were all about color and design.
Absolutely.
You know, so that had an influence down into the more general mass market cars. Eventually, the Model A Ford finally came out with the nice. You saw beiges and creams and some greens. Were normally, you know, black, and certainly by the Deuce, you had a pretty good color range. General Motors had already been there, but certainly in the late 20s, you look at Duesenberg's, Cord, all the coach builders, Bowman and Schwartz, Waterhouse. You know,
well, and I'm thinking even more the French, you know, the
Delahaye
and Fagoni and Falaschi.
Fagoni and Falaschi, you know, of course.
Talk about fashion.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. The fashion has always been an integral part of the car experience, and as well as its influence. So to not include fashion considerations in car photography, to me, seems like a strange thing to do, and you know, why wouldn't you?
Right.
So part of my initiative, if you will, in car photography over in the course since I've been doing it professionally here for the last decade or so, has been to try to integrate fashion photography into the milieu. I have a separate Instagram page that's Auto Fashion, and it's all about just fashion and photography. And the female form, of course, has always been a great inspiration for art, you know, through millenniums, right? So no surprise there. And integrating fashion and fashion lifestyle into the car marketing, in both the car design as well as the marketing of it, is a natural combination. So when you get the likes of a Eugenia Kuzmina or Brandy Banks or Elena Ilnitskaya, who you met earlier today. You put a beautiful woman, even in proximity with a car, you're going to get a good chance of creating a compelling image, regardless of who's doing the shooting. You've got. I tell people, I'm always so amazed when people always say, "What a great photograph!" I said, when you have subject matter like this, when you got a Porsche 962, in a few days we're going to have Elena Ilnitskaya in here with this car. Well, come on. You give a monkey a camera, you're going to get something that people are going to want to look at.
Let's remind people of your Instagram pages so they can check it out while they're listening.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got one page that is devoted to automotive fashion. It's called Auto Fashion.
So Auto Fashion by Royce R924. Okay.
Auto Fashion. And when we do fashion photography, it's not bikinis. It's none of that. It's all, we tend to do haute couture kind of stuff. We want this to be, these kind of cars have an elegance and sophistication that demand that kind of reverence, and we want to carry that through. We're not here to cheesecake it up and demean either the woman or the car.
What's your feeling on the whole hot rod pinup angle on photography? Because I think that can be very well done.
Well, but that's a different culture.
Sure.
Again, the whole hot rod culture is immersed in that kind of adolescent. Well, it's an adolescence kind of approach, a rebel without a cause kind of approach. But you bring up Rebel Without a Cause. Think about that. Natalie Wood looks darn good in that film, and she's never in anything other than full sweater. We talked earlier about the '55 Ford and Suzanne Summers in the '55 Ford. Do you see any skin? Never. Right. Never. It's all about attitude.
So you've done that kind of those hot rod shoots.
We do the hot rod shoots. We're here in California. Hot rods are part of the culture.
Sure. So Royce, I know you make the rounds at various auto events and tours every year, and
well, that's a result of friendships, relationships. I've been able to develop. I'm fortunate enough to be of a demographic where guys who have car collections can relate to me. We can talk about things of common experience, of common knowledge amongst us. So I've been very, very fortunate to have friendships who have wonderful car collections, which has then led to me being invited to go on tours as a photographer. Right. I've done tours with Bentley, Owners Group, Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, Porsches, and I really love doing that kind of photography because it's in situ. You get a chance to shoot these cars actually being driven. When you do a studio shot with a full cove and what have you, that's white Cyclone. There's not a whole lot of distinction. Yes, you can do technical things in terms of light and color and things like that, but it's still basically a car in a cove. And I've done cars in a cove, and it's fun. I mean, you can get great shots. We're shooting a car in, particularly if you're lucky enough to be driven around like we did shooting Death Valley with Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost a few years ago.
I was just going to say that's probably my favorite series of yours.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
Yeah, the cars come alive, and part of it is because those cars are old cars. I mean, you don't see those cars on the road.
Let me tell you a story about that. So I'd already done a few tours. I've been on the Colorado Grand a few times, which is a great event. If you ever get a chance to go on Colorado Grand, go.
I'll take it.
It's great. I've been doing Mercedes tours, things like this. So I get invited to shoot the Rolls-Royce at
Death Valley
a few years ago. Sam Mann is a great car collector. He's won Pebble Beach 4 times, a wonderful guy, wonderful friend. Ironically, also an industrial design graduate from University of Cincinnati. I found out doing a Hispano Suiza tour.
What do you know?
Yeah, who knew? I arrive at the hotel there at Furnace Creek, where they've got now 20 Silver Ghosts assembled. Now, these are all cars built from 1908 to 1926. This is in 2017. So these are cars, all these cars are 100 years old. And I get out there, meet up with Sam, I see the cars assembled. I said, where's your chase vehicle? Where's the tending vehicle? Because typically in Mercedes or other tours, you always have 1 or 2 vehicles running around that are going to help people out when they get stranded. Well, these are Rolls Royces. we don't need support vehicles. You know, you talk about a flathead 6, right? So this is Death Valley. I said, well, flatheads. I said, aren't you concerned about vapor lock? He said, no, these are pressurized fuel systems. How foolish of me. You know, I'm feeling like an idiot. You know, of course they are. They're Rolls Royces. Even though they're 100 years old, they're pressurized fuel systems, right? And sure enough, I spent 4 days chasing these cars around. I had an Infiniti FX45 at the time. It was modified, so it could get up and go. I spent 4 days driving around chasing these cars at 70 and 80 miles an hour in desert heat, 100-degree heat. Not one of them broke in 4 days. Nothing.
Remarkable.
Sure enough, Sam was right. That's why they're Rolls Royces.
Right.
That's why the mark has the reputation that it did then. That's why guys like Lawrence of Arabia, why you saw those cars in giant out in ranches, wasn't because they were expensive cars, it's because they were reliable.
Right.
Those are the cars that would go, would work for you. They were working vehicles.
Yeah, the Rolls-Royce armored cars from World War I are pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's an amazing piece of engineering and manufacturing. And Silver Ghost, like so many car names, that was not a name that Rolls-Royce gave their cars. That was a journalistic name. Just like Silver Arrows was not a.
That's right.
Pagoda wasn't a name that was, and neither was Gullwing.
That's right.
Those were all brands that were established by virtue of the public response or the press media response to the cars.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is my. I mean, I love all your photographs, but that one those cars come alive. Okay. And to see them underway, I mean, there's so much motion in those still images. That's what you captured.
Oh, thank you.
Very cool. Plus, everybody in the car's in period costumes, I think.
Well, some people are.
Some people are. Okay.
Not everybody, but of course that helps.
Yeah.
You get some of that at Pebble on the ground there.
Sure.
And that's more and more the case every year. You find more and more people being dressed in period correct to their cars, which is, again, that's bringing the whole fashion thing back into play. Right?
By the way, Royce, have you been to Villa d'Este yet?
I've not been to Villa d'Este. Interesting enough, we had 250 Europa GT here at Lion last year that won Villa d'Este.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ken Roth who's a local collector here. I've not. That's a life. That and Goodwood, of course, are on my need to do list. I may end up going to this year for the first time the Mille Miglia. It's one of those things. I think it's all over, but the screaming right now for me is just a matter of getting out the credit card, saying, okay, let's go.
Can I hitch a ride in your luggage?
Yeah, really. Yeah. I just need to think about who I could take along that's going to speak fluent enough Italian.
Parlo italiano, amico.
Oh, well, there we go. I think I found my guy.
All right. Yeah. Royce, you have a deep involvement also with Lion Air Museum, which I think we can't ignore.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I came to I knew of the Lion Air Museum when it opened, and their first exhibit that they had here was a General Lions in Duesenbergs. So I came over, came into the museum. It's a beautiful facility, and he had 10 Duesenbergs around. We didn't have platforms then, so they're just on the floor here. And he had the Gurney nutting, that beautiful Maharaja black, boat-tailed black with the orange, sitting right here where the B-25 is, in that window light. It's just, from a photography standpoint, you go, oh my gosh, I'll just stay here for the next day and shoot this car. So I started shooting, and then because of my association with Mercedes-Benz, they had an exhibit here about 4 or 5 years ago of General Lions Mercedes-Benz. And so I came by and introduced myself as a photographer for Mercedes-Benz, and I was shooting for Mercedes Star magazine. I said, I'd like to do a shoot here. And they said, oh, okay. So that was one of my first articles. I've now been published over 22 times. I'm an ongoing photographer for World Magazine out of New Zealand, which is a real high-end luxury lifestyle quarterly, like Rob Report on steroids. I'm on their masthead with Peter Lick and Annie Leibovitz. As I said, when the publisher put me on there, I said, you realize, of course, Don Hope, the publisher, said, you've got, your readership is going, well, we know who Annie is, and we know who Peter, like, who's this Royce guy? kind of thing. But he laughed. He was very gracious about it. So I'm ongoing. We have ongoing photo articles in there. For Star magazine, the German Mercedes magazine.
Right.
Motor Trend has picked up some of my stuff. I also shoot for a new Canadian publication called Motology. We did our first article, cover story article, in their most recent issue, and we're going to do an article about this exhibit. It's going to be in their next issue. So yeah, I've been very fortunate. So I was here at the museum shooting the Mercedes. As of about a year or so ago, they made me the official photographer here. So I've been fortunate enough to continue that relationship. And we also do shoots now for members. A new member will bring their car in. We can bring it into the museum or out on the tarmac, and we'll do if they have a car that they want to have shot, we'll do a series of shots that comes along with a membership, and they get a portfolio of photographs with warbirds, which try doing that anywhere else these days.
No kidding.
Good luck. Yeah.
Well, Royce, your work really does have a signature. I can look at a shot and know it's yours, and that, I mean, that's what you want, right?
And well, that's, when people ask about photography, and I tell people, you do, these days with iPhones, there's such a plethora of imagery.
Unlimited.
Yeah, it's unlimited. You better create a visual signature. And again, I would attribute some of that to an influence in automotive design, the art center rendering, if you will, approach.
Angle choice.
Yeah, angle choice and lighting. I am a nut about an image creating a primary light source and a secondary light source, and making sure that light is consistent in the photograph, where I don't have any arguments of shadow and influence and highlights.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I'm wondering what type of post-production stuff you do.
I do what's popularly known as round tripping, where you start off in Lightroom to create your basic adjustments, and I've got more presets than I can even think about. So I'll create an image as a DNG file out of that, that I will then take into Photoshop. I always work in RAW, and I'll make adjustments in Photoshop that will then go back to Lightroom for final adjustments. And a lot of that isn't because each shot needs it, it's because you never are taking a shot by itself. I'm always taking a shot that's a series of photos, and you have to have that continuity, the consistency of image look, so that way that gives you an opportunity to create the consistency of image across a series of photos.
Right. I'm not a still photographer, so I'm a little bit ignorant about this, but do you use multiple images to
in terms
composite?
Of well, I do some compositing. I try not to.
Right.
But I will if the situation calls for it. Now I will go into a photograph and eliminate things using stamping, cloning, that kind of thing. For example, we've got, like these stanchions around here.
Sure.
If there's one in the background I need to get rid of, I'll do that, just to clean up the image visually.
Or a signpost or a garbage can.
Oh yeah, the classic, telephone pole,
right.
telephone wires, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
definitely.
Just cleaning up the imagery.
For sure.
It's interesting because there's sometimes when you don't want to do that. If the photograph, the nature of the photograph is more situational, where you're really trying to get the gestalt of that particular point in time.
Right.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to eliminate those things. That's part of the texture of the photo. So it's not always 100% call to get rid of that kind of stuff. It's very much situationally directed.
Yes, sometimes that can actually sort of sterilize an image.
It can. It's like over airbrushing a fashion model.
I want to remind people where they can see your work again. So
Royce R924 on Instagram is all Mercedes. That's exclusively Mercedes-Benz photos.
Okay.
Work done for Mercedes-Benz. Autofocused by Royce R924 are all other automotive brands. Porsche, Ferrari, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, what have you.
Right.
Even some hot rods. And then Auto Fashion by Royce R924 is the automotive fashion work. Those are my three primary Instagram accounts.
Okay, so that should keep you guys busy for, I don't know, a few days at least.
Yeah, there's a few thousand images on there for you to get bored with.
Royce, thanks for being with us today.
My honor
fun.
and pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for supporting the podcast and the YouTube channel. If you haven't done it already, please like, subscribe, and rate either on your podcast app or on YouTube. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll be here for the next episode of Horsepower Heritage.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.